You give, and you call it virtue. But somewhere underneath the generosity, there is a person who has stopped asking whether any of this was a choice. Welcome to the Stoic Compass. I am Epictetus, and today I am joined by Carl Jung and LAOZI. Today we are examining, is there such a thing as being too good, too giving, too patient, too available? Let me be direct. The question itself is a trap. Too good is not a moral category. It is a behavioral description. When someone calls themselves too giving, what they usually mean is that they have been giving without examining why. That is not goodness. That is compulsion dressed in virtue's clothing. Goodness requires choice. If you cannot stop, it is not a virtue. It is a habit you have not yet interrogated. The person who gives because they cannot bear the discomfort of withholding is not generous. They are avoidant. There's a meaningful difference. And if you collapse it, you will spend your whole life congratulating yourself for something that is actually costing you everything.
That is a useful distinction, but I think it misses the deeper structure of why this pattern forms in the first place. People do not simply decide one day to be compulsively generous. The compulsion has roots. What I so often see, and what the clinical evidence strongly suggests, is that extreme giving is frequently a compensation. The person who cannot say no has, somewhere in their history, learned that their needs were unwelcome. Perhaps they were conditional, perhaps they were punished. And so the ego constructed a strategy. Be useful, be available, be indispensable, and perhaps then you will be safe. The giving is not coming from love. It is coming from fear that has learned to wear love's face. Until that is seen clearly, no amount of willpower or stoic discipline will resolve it.
You are both already inside the problem before you have described it. Epictetus says, examine your motives. Jung says, excavate your history. But neither of you has asked the simpler question, what does this person actually believe they are doing when they give? Because most of the time, they are not thinking about virtue or compensation at all. They are simply responding to what is in front of them. The giving is not the problem. The not stopping is the problem. And the not stopping is not caused by bad motives or hidden wounds. It is caused by the inability to see what is enough. They have lost contact with the place inside themselves that knows when a thing is complete.
LAOZI, that is very elegant, but it does not help anyone. Lost contact with the place that knows when a thing is complete. What does that mean in practice? I'm asking a concrete question. When does a person stop? What is the internal signal? Because the person sitting in exhaustion right now, giving their last reserves to people who have come to expect it, does not need a philosophical observation about completion. They need a criterion. What is in your control and what is not? Your time is yours. Your energy is yours. The demand being placed on you is not yours unless you choose to make it yours. That is the criterion. It is not complicated.
But Epictetus, your criterion assumes the person has access to a clear sense of self from which to make that choice. Many of them do not. That is precisely the difficulty. When I work with someone who cannot stop giving, what I find is not a failure of logic. It is a failure of identity. They do not know where they end and others begin. The psychological boundary has either never formed or was dissolved so early in their life that it feels like a natural condition rather than a wound. You cannot reason your way into a boundary you have never experienced having. And this is where I part ways with you, because the work is not to decide, it is to discover. To discover what belongs to you, what is actually yours, before you can begin to choose.
I would say something different. You are both treating this as a problem of the individual, their motives, their history, their identity. But the pattern almost always exists between people, not just inside one of them. The person who gives compulsively is usually giving to someone who takes without asking. And the taker does not see themselves as taking. They see themselves as receiving what is freely offered. The situation persists because both people are participating in it, not maliciously, but persistently. Neither of them is looking at what the arrangement has actually become.
Fine, then let us look at what the arrangement has become. Someone is being depleted. Someone else is benefiting from that depletion. And the person being depleted has told themselves a story, usually something about love or duty or the kind of person they want to be, that makes it impossible for them to question the arrangement without also questioning their own identity. That is the trap. You cannot solve it by talking about the other person. You can only solve it by asking, what am I refusing to see about my own role here?
I agree with that formulation more than I disagree with it, but I want to push on something. The story the person tells themselves, I am generous, I am patient, I am good. that story is not arbitrary. It is often the story they were given as children and accepted because it was the price of belonging. The giving child was the loved child, the patient child was the safe child. And now they are adults who have built their entire sense of worth around a behavior that was originally not a free choice at all. When you ask them to stop, you are not just asking them to change a habit. You are asking them to become someone they have never been and to survive the terror that they will be abandoned for it.
That terror is real. I'm not dismissing it. But I notice that describing the terror in great detail does not dissolve it. At some point, the person has to move. Not because they have finished understanding themselves, not because they have resolved the wound, but because something in them knows that the current arrangement is false. They may not be able to name the wound. They may not have Epictetus's clarity about what belongs to them, but they can feel the falseness. That feeling is the thing worth attending to, not analyzing it, not overriding it, just noticing that it is there.
Now we are getting somewhere. The falseness is the signal. And here is what I want to add to that. The falseness has a practical form. It shows up as resentment. The truly generous person does not accumulate resentment. They give what they have chosen to give, and they stop when they have reached the limit of what they chose. The person who is compulsively available, compulsively patient, compulsively kind, they are not resentment-free. They are full of it. They are just not allowing themselves to name it, because naming it would collapse the story. So they keep giving and they keep resenting, and they call the whole arrangement goodness.
Resentment is an excellent diagnostic marker, yes, and I would add to it the phenomenon of what I sometimes call the exhausted saint. The person who has given so much that they have become, in effect, empty. They cannot tell you what they want, they cannot tell you what they enjoy, they do not know their own preferences because they have spent so long orienting themselves entirely toward others that the interior life has simply gone dark. And in that darkness, something usually emerges that surprises them. Anger or contempt or a sudden brutal impulse to disappear entirely. That is the shadow of the good person, everything they refuse to be, pressing back.
The shadow is real, the resentment is real. But I want to say something about what both of you are pointing toward without quite saying. You are describing a person who has lost themselves, but they have not actually lost themselves. They have covered themselves. The self is still there. It has been there the entire time, making small signals they have learned to ignore. The question is not how to build a self or how to excavate one. The question is how to stop drowning it out. Most people know, in the quietest part of themselves, exactly when they have given enough. They just do not trust that knowledge. They override it immediately, every time.
So the problem is trust. You do not trust your own perception that you have reached your limit. Why? Because you have decided that your limit is a moral failure. You have made having a limit equivalent to being a bad person. That is the belief that needs to be interrogated. Limits are not selfishness. Limits are the precondition for any genuine giving at all. A river without banks is not generous. It is a flood. It destroys what it touches. The person who cannot say no is not serving anyone. They are overwhelming everyone, including themselves.
The river without banks is a striking image. Though I would add, often the people around an exhausted giver are not relieved when the giver finally sets a limit. They are destabilized by it. They have organized their lives around the assumption of availability. So the giver who finally says no faces not just internal terror, but external pressure. Genuine hurt, sometimes anger, sometimes the accusation of selfishness. And that pressure confirms their deepest fear, which is that the limit will cost them the relationship. Sometimes it does. That is not a small thing.
No, it is not small. And I will say plainly, sometimes the relationship that ends when you stop giving without limit was not a real relationship. It was an arrangement. The two things are not the same. A real relationship can survive a limit. An arrangement cannot, because the arrangement was built on the absence of one.
That is the clearest thing that has been said in this conversation. Let us not rush past it.
I agree with the distinction, but I want to name the grief involved because Epictetus, you tend to move quickly past the grief. When someone discovers that what they thought was love was actually an arrangement, that is a devastating realization. It does not land as clarity, it lands as loss. The person needs to be allowed to feel that loss, not just to act from the new understanding. Otherwise, they will simply reconstruct the same arrangement with different people because they have changed their behavior without changing what they believe they deserve.
You are both right about different parts of the same thing. Epictetus is right that action is required. Jung is right that understanding is required. But there is something prior to both. You have to be willing to stop performing the goodness long enough to find out what is actually underneath it. Not to analyze it, not yet. Just to stop the motion and see what is there. Most people are frightened of that pause. Because in the pause, they might discover that the goodness was never entirely about the other person.
Then, let us say that plainly. The goodness was never entirely about the other person. Some of it was about you. About your need to be needed, your fear of being seen as selfish, your terror of the empty moment when there is nothing left to give, and someone might look at you and find you wanting. That is not an indictment. That is just what is true for most people. The question is whether you can see it and keep giving anyway, but now consciously. Giving from choice, not from compulsion. That is the difference. It is small in description and enormous in practice.
I want to return to something LAOZI said that I think is understated. The knowledge of when enough is enough. He said it is always there, being overridden. I think that is correct, and I think the thing doing the overriding is not always fear or conditioning, though those are present. Sometimes it is the ego's investment in the identity of the good person. There is a quiet pleasure in being seen as endlessly patient, endlessly available. It is a form of power, actually. The person who never refuses has a kind of moral authority. To give that up, to become limited, fallible, sometimes unavailable, feels like a demotion. That loss of identity is underestimated.
It is underestimated because it looks like virtue from the outside. Patience that comes from need looks identical to patience that comes from genuine ease. Generosity from fear looks identical to generosity from abundance. You cannot see the difference from the outside. You can only feel it from the inside. And the feeling is this: when the giving comes from abundance, you do not track it. You are not monitoring whether it is being received well, whether you are being appreciated, whether the other person recognizes what you are doing. When you are tracking those things, the giving is coming from somewhere else entirely.
That is the test, then. You are running a ledger. You know exactly how much you have given and how little you have received. And you are furious about it even while you keep giving. Stop. Just stop. The fury is not a sign that you should give more carefully. It is a sign that you should stop long enough to ask a real question. What was I expecting to get from this? Because you were expecting something, and it is time to admit that. All of this debate, and we have circled around the one thing most people will not say out loud. Let us say it now.
Here is the thing most people who consider themselves too giving, too patient, too available will not admit. The giving was never entirely selfless. Some of it was a strategy, not a conscious one, not a dishonest one, but a strategy nonetheless. It was a way of being needed, a way of being safe, a way of guaranteeing that the people around you would not leave. And for a long time, it probably worked. The problem is that strategies become invisible. You stop seeing them as choices and start experiencing them as character. This is just who I am. And once it becomes who you are, you cannot question it without feeling like you are questioning your own worth. The signal that the strategy has stopped working is not exhaustion, though exhaustion is part of it. The signal is the ledger. You are keeping track. You know exactly what you have given and what you have not received. And you tell yourself the resentment means you need better people in your life, or more rest, or a vacation. It does not. The resentment means you expected something in return and you were not honest with yourself about that expectation. This is not a condemnation, it is a door. When you can see clearly what you were hoping to receive, safety, approval, love that felt earned rather than given freely, you can begin to address that need directly rather than through the exhausting performance of endless availability. Today, try this. Think of one relationship where you have been consistently giving more than feels right. Do not try to fix the relationship. Just write down honestly what you were hoping that giving would secure for you, not what you told yourself it was for, what you were hoping it would prevent.
You are not too good. You are good in ways that have been covering something. There is a difference, and it matters. The virtue you are protecting is real, but underneath it, there is a need you have not named yet. Name it, not to condemn yourself, not to tear down what you have built, but because an unnamed need runs your life regardless. The question is not whether to keep giving. The question is whether from now on the giving is something you choose, or something that chooses you. If today's conversation has served you, take it further. Pay Attention by C. Tribune, 12 Lessons in the Practice of Seeing Clearly, available now on Amazon.